he has worked at various prominent hospitals, including Mulchand Hospital, Apollo, Max Group of Hospitals. We are also joined by Dr. Sameer Malhotra, who's Director and Head of Department, Mental Health, Behavioral Science, Max Super Specialty. Dr. Malhotra has 2 decades of experience in training and clinical experiences at several prestigious institutes, which includes PGIMR Chandigarh, NIMHANS Bangalore, AIIMS, and he has also worked in the Department of Psychiatry, National Drug Dependence Treatment Center, AIIMS, and National Health Services in United Kingdom. We are joined by Ramesh Kara, who's Vice President Brand Strategy, Byjus. He has worked for over 12 years in sales and marketing. And before this, he was the CEO and co-founder of Editor Technologies. We are honored to have Mr. Anil Kumar, who's the principal of Delhi Public School, Faridabad. He's a passionate educator and a leader with 30 years of experience. And he has served as principal of DPS Faridabad for about 19 years. So he is also a pioneer in taking forward the digital platform. And his mantra has been keep learning. I welcome you all, gentlemen, and it's a huge honor. We'll take this session forward and talk about several things which is happening. The parents are concerned about the screen time. The parents are really worried about the uncertainty that has marred everyone. More than the parents, the children themselves are quite worried about the situation, the new situation that we are caught in, about which there is no clarity so far. So I'll begin with Dr. Naveen Sakhuja, and I would try to understand as to what is the new scenario and how beneficial it is for the youngsters. Do you think we are in the right kind of situation? Do we have right kind of resources? And is it the right time for us to move forward?
Thank you very much for asking me to be here on the panel. And it's a really nice feeling. It's a great honor to be here. See, there's no denying the fact that what we are in now is like a new normal. This is how it is, like you just mentioned, that we're on a screen for a large part of the day. And a condition which was originally thought to be primarily a condition for adults and less so in children, a condition of dry eye, has now started manifesting more and more in younger and younger children. And in a clinical practice, we see more and more younger children coming with complaints of dryness, irritation, redness, fatigue, gritty eyes, itchy eyes, and a desire to sort of squeeze and rub them. So I'll give you just a little background on the whole thing. Basically, it is not like the screen actually produces something in it which makes our eye dry. What actually happens is that screen viewing is like a hypnotic effect. So when you stare at a screen for a continuous amount of time, you reduce your blink rates. The average human blinks about, let's say on an average, once every 6 to 7 seconds. It varies between males and females and so on, but we'll take this as a ballpark figure. Now, blinking is like a sweeping of the eye to re-moisturize it. The eye has to remain moist all the time, like all the other mucous membranes of the body. And when you stare at a screen and it's a hypnotic state, like you just stare and continuously stare, blink rates drop. When the blink rates drop, the oil secretions reduce and the tears begin to evaporate much faster. And therefore, on a situation when you're on a screen for a large amount of time, like now, I think young adults are on a screen for almost 70% of the time to 80% of the time, and many of them on 2 screens at the same time. So as a result of that, the eye becomes dry and gritty and uncomfortable because they are undergoing a chronic fatigue. So now to answer your question about what one can do about it, there's little one can do about the fact that you'll have to use the screen. You just have to. Their education is on the screen, their entertainment is on the screen, their communication with friends is on the screen, like adults, quite frankly. So basically, you'll have to cut down on the frivolous screen, actually. Reduce the amount of, like the example. Would you like me to tell you how exactly they need to sort it out, or would you like to?
Sure, why not? Why not, please.
So there's one simple thing that you can use to sort out is a rule called the 20-20-20 rule. That means every 20 minutes, look at an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds. It's a simple thing. Just staring at, let's say, a tree outside your window will allow the eyes to reduce their staring the business and allow them to blink a little more. In addition, things like keep screen brightness a little lower, avoid washing. This is an important thing. Avoid washing the eyes too much. It's a normal sort of assumption that we must wash our eyes regularly all the time. Washing the eye will dry it out. It will wash out your tears. So it's not a good idea to wash the eyes again. Giving frequent or at least 2 to 3 days, 3 times a day, giving it hot compresses is a good idea. Allows the oil to express out. Keeping screen brightness a little low, staring a little less at the screen, and allowing yourself to consciously blink while you're on a screen. And then the example that I give to parents and children also, that think of your screen time like a diet. If you've got to choose between a carrot and a chocolate, all of us know the carrot is the better thing to have. You're not going to only have the carrot. Once in a while you have the chocolate, it doesn't kill you. But if you only have the chocolate, that too is not a great idea. So just what I'm trying to say here is that cut down on the frivolous screen time, on the time when you're just browsing unnecessarily. Increased amount of outdoor activity also goes a long way in sort of preventing progression of sort of myopic changes and reducing the dryness. So I think that should more or less cover what they need to do, really.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Sakhuja. I think it's a very important thing which most parents would want to know, but they do not know where to ask these questions. Dr. Malhotra, my question is to you because youngsters are complaining about a lot of stress and anxiety while they are inside the house. They're locked up inside the house unnecessarily. This is something which we never thought would ever happen to us. And the worst part is the youngsters, the school-going students, the college goers, they're never taken seriously. Anxiety issues in them is not addressed so seriously, and nobody gives a damn about it because they think that it's all right. I mean, these are all young bunch of, people who have a lot of things in hand. So what do you have to say to them? What do you think? Are we even aware of the problem that we have in hand?
Priyanka, first of all, I must congratulate you and the entire team of Times of India to bring this important, relevant topic in today's unprecedented time and age. Dr. Sakhuja has already laid a little background of what I was thinking to speak about. With regards to the mental health issues, recently we also conducted one study, and this was conducted under the aegis of our Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Sciences at Max Hospitals. And we tapped more than 200 adolescent children in the urban setting. And what we found was that almost 70% of them had disturbed sleep-wake cycle during this period. Almost 40%, close to 40% had increased their online gaming time. So that was going up. What we also saw was an increase in social networking through media and through these, gadgets. So obviously, when you are indoors, it calls for a change in lifestyle. You have to basically prioritize issues. But when it comes to feeling stressed, we also saw significant anxiety symptoms coming up in children of that particular age. Now, when we talk about stress, it's not just the stressor which is responsible for the stress. It is also the way you process that information or that situation in your mind that makes you feel stressed or burdened. So a lot depends on your life skills. A lot depends upon your coping skills, the way you prioritize issues. And like Dr. Sakhuja also said, there has to be a balance. So you can't have carrots all day and you can't have chocolates all day. You need a kind of a fine balance. And when we talk about healthy lifestyle in particular, we talk about healthy sleep-wake schedules. We talk about some physical exercise. We talk about some family time where you are talking to one another and you are discussing issues which are happening in your mind or perhaps in your context. We also talk about some creative hobbies and interests. Those are things which start getting compromised when we are too much involved and engrossed in gadgets. Particularly so what we see is if there's a lot of time spent on these gadgets, and children tend to hold on to their mobile phones even while they are in bed at night. They sleep very late. They are not getting up in time. So when they are getting up, say around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, half of the day is already gone. And because of that, see, it's important for us to rise early in the morning because there's a flow of neurochemicals, there's a flow of hormones which happens in the morning. Melatonin gets secreted at night time, which helps us in catching up with our sleep. And sleep has a restorative brain function. So if we are not sleeping adequately and if we are not sleeping restfully enough, and we are still holding on to those gadgets in our hands, then obviously there's a phase delay in our sleep-wake schedule, or there'll be interrupted sleep, because of which even you're not eating in time. So your breakfast happens, say, around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. You've already passed the lunchtime by then. So when that is the kind of a schedule that youngsters have begun to follow, then it obviously takes a toll not only on your mind health, but also on your bodily health. And the two are intertwined. You can't segregate one from another because mind is also a function of the brain. So what we are seeing is easy fatigability, not just of the eyes, but physically also. They feel easily tired. Two, they are most of the times leading a sedentary lifestyle. So they are not exercising enough. At home also, they can engage in some exercise. They're not going for any digital detox. Now, when you're on the dining table with the family, you should be keeping your mobile phones off. So there has to be some period when these gadgets have to be away from us. They should not be sleeping with their mobile in hand. And ideally speaking, an hour before going to bed, all these gadgets should be in a different room or switched off or put on a charging mode in a different room rather than being in bed with them, because you're constantly stimulating yourself with these gadgets. The other thing is your communication skills are also getting hampered, because when you have less of eye contact, FaceTime, less of interaction with family, you're getting lost in your own world. And this is a very sensitive and vulnerable age of development. So you tend to kind of hit on those sides which can expose your vulnerability, where you can be subject to cyberbullying, where you can be exploited later in life. And on these platforms, if you put some piece of information, then that information stays there. You cannot erase it, isn't it? So you become all the more vulnerable. At the same time, if there are certain sites where there's a lot of violent content, that also affects your mind. There are certain games which children also get into, and those are strategic violent games. And they again desensitize you towards violent behavior, as a result of which you tend to become aggressive or irritable. Your communication skills get hampered. Your sleep-wake cycle is already getting disturbed, as a result of which your ability to cope with day-to-day stresses also goes disturbed. And you become vulnerable to anxiety or depression as a result. And your interaction with family also gets quite disturbed. Many times you're also seeing an increase in self-harming behavior in youngsters during this phase. And there's a concept of expressed emotions. When you're staying indoors with your family, you're seeing maybe a bit more of each other, but you're lost in your own worlds. And at times you're also interacting in a very negative way, where you are passing judgments, you are overreacting. And remember, adolescence is anyways an age where you have an emotional development alongside happening, and there are bursts of heightened experiences of emotions. So those things are reflected at times in your body language, in terms of the words that you choose, and that again is something which is not very good in your overall personality development. So I would again say it needs a right balance. We must respect our sleep-wake schedule. We should not dodge our hypothalamus, because that's the one which is responsible and helps in our sleep-wake cycle. It's also the seat of all emotions and hormones in our body. And we should not be disturbing our inner equilibrium, our inner homeostasis, because that again reflects, I always say, harmony within leads to harmony outside and harmony in relationships. So if there's a lot of distress inside, which is again self-imposed because of a faulty lifestyle, it tends to reflect in that manner. Another issue was with respect to certain challenges that children do tend to take up because of lack of any meaning or purpose. And I think in today's age, it's very important to define a little meaning and purpose to one's life from the very beginning, irrespective of the age, from the very beginning, so that there's some meaning and purpose defined in a child's life. To see people who do not have access to certain things that they have, so that there's an inbuilt sense of gratitude in children. Those kind of things, that value-based education is the need of the hour, and ability. See, no technology is bad. Today, technology is helping us connect. This webinar is happening because of technological connect. It is important. Online classes are happening because of a technological connect. These are important tools, but they should be used judiciously. They should be used with the right priorities and the right approach. Overuse, misuse is something which is not good for your bodily or mental health.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Malhotra. It's quite insightful and something which everybody would want to know. I think we should have the next question pointed to Mr. Anil Kumar, because he is an educator, and I think everything that we discussed is having a direct impact on the school-going children. So, Mr. Kumar, I would want to know as to how is the how are the schools facing this this uncertain time, because the biggest pressure is on the teachers. They have all of a sudden migrated to online teaching pattern, which they are not used to. The students are also coping up with it, but the larger pressure is on the teachers who have to perform, and they are also getting used to technology as well as teaching, and then dealing with the curriculum and many other things that challenges have come up to them. So what do you have to say, and how do you look at this situation?
I must tell you one thing. What I have noticed at my place here in Faridabad at Delhi Public School, it was 24th of March when it was declared that there is a complete lockdown. And then there is a complete lockdown. We were aware of the fact that it is not going to go so easily, in the sense that we were not even aware about what the virus is all about. So what to talk of its precautions other than which was guided by the WHO. So the idea was whether we'll be able to open the schools in a physical format for the entire session or not. I was very clear in my mind that it won't. So we have to find a way out so that we are connected with the kids. So 24th March and by 6th April, this technology, which we are referring to as how much screen time is too much and what is too much is to be defined, is to be made clear, was set on that very day itself. So our session began as usual on 6th of April with the help of this technology and the various gadgets and all that. But the precision in which it was kept in mind was that all educators have to keep in mind that in order to reduce screen time, they have to ensure that they cannot be the same classroom which was of 40 minutes effectively going for 25 minutes. Here, if it is 25 minutes, it will be more than 50 minutes. The reason is when you are speaking on a particular topic and you know that this is the content, and the child can view that content at any point in time after having a recording available of it. Therefore, you have to be precise in your talk. That made a lot of difference. And what we ensured for the senior kids, because it was not a big challenge for us, because we have been on tablet-based learning for our 9th and 10th students from past 5 years. And when we know that that experiment has gone very well with the kids, why we picked up class 9 and 10 at that time was that the average age of a child was 14 years. And by then, I'm sure Dr. Sahuja will definitely agree with that also, that the fairly size of the eyeball is developed and child can hold on to a tablet, which is a sufficiently good screen, which is not that stressful. So 9th, 10th, we started on, and then it was from there, it is a slight transition getting into the online mode of teaching. Yes, it was a challenge for teachers, because teachers, those who are not, I'll say the one who's good at maths, not necessarily true with the gadget. The one who is with biology is not surely going to be in that same frame. But let me tell you, one thing which this pandemic has very clearly established is that the human race is highly resilient. There is only one way to remove the human race from this planet is some catastrophe. There is other ways this human race will find a way out to wriggle it out. And actually speaking, while I was contemplating the classes for my school here, it's a beautiful time which people are not realizing. 768 years it takes for Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter to be in conjunct. 768 years. Solar system behaves like this after every 768 years. Neowise comet repeats after 6,800 years, happening within the same year. More than that, which is absolutely an eye-opener, is that the sun revolves around the Milky Way center, which we don't consider in our solar system. It takes about 200 million to 225 million years to complete an orbit. We are in such fortunate times. We are calling it unfortunate because of that we have never been that disciplined which we should have been. So that is the cause which is creating a, I'll say, unrest in the mind of the people. When you have the freedom, we actually realize that you use it the way you want to use it, without realizing that the freedom is also has its own limitations. Now, nature has set those limitations for all of us. That's why perhaps we are feeling the fatigue of it, the tiredness of it. But truly speaking, when I say, if I precisely quote, on 13th of July this year, Sun completed an orbit, if I were to say, from observatory point in US to observatory point in India. There may be an hour or 6 hours or 10 hours difference. But imagine if scientists have come to this conclusion that one complete orbit is there in this period of time and we are all watching it, we are in fact fortunate. How we have to address this, that we need to be very clear about. That we are perhaps basically failing. Now, children, you just tell them they are real. I must tell you, they are the ones, those who set barriers for whatever things. So no child in my school goes onto the screen beyond a particular point in time. 40 minutes class for 11th and 12th class students, then there is a break. 20 minutes class for a middle school student, then there is a break. Like what doctor said, 20, Dr. Sakuja mentioned, that is written in my first circular to the parent, mentioning that make sure not more than 20 minutes of screen viewing has to be there at one point in time. Because these are established facts. And when these are established facts, we must discipline ourselves. Now the question comes up, how to regulate this, how to have the mental balance on during this time. And the greatest challenge which educational setups are going to face is when the schools reopen. It's not that there is no more challenge now, because we are all accustomed to it. We know that there are dried eyes. Everybody is on tears. Everybody is on with some kind of medications, and everybody is taking the required precautions. Only those set of people, those who are deprived of the technology and of the information, are definitely suffering. I'm not saying that the entire India is in the same good frame, but yes, we can be. Having said this, the challenge will occur only when children are accustomed to, for a I'll say period of about 10 months now, in a confined space, and happily seeing mummy, papa, and other people at home. What will happen when they will get to see the same 1,000, 2,000 kids in the school back? That is what, and how they mix up at that point in time. That is what is a bigger challenge which we are going to face. And I'm sure the greater to this will be the trust building between the parent, the child, the school, and the atmosphere all over. So these are the challenges which I'm looking at, which are going to be a tough one in any case. But they are surely, I'll say, if we have the quality which is being established by this pandemic, is that, oh, you are resilient, let's have patience. So the patience is one quality perhaps which most children have acquired now. Is those who used to be irritable, within no time they know that they have to confine within this. They have to have a restraint on what they are supposed to eat, what they are supposed to do. All that is being monitored well. So overall, if I were to say, it is tough time, but the tougher ones will stand. So how tough we are and how tough we are making our kids on this is a challenge for all of us. And honestly speaking, children are children. They can come up from any adversity. You give them a challenge, they meet it out much better than what they are supposed to. And you anticipate at times. So what I have done is that at our place is that I have told my kids, those who are in the council, to teach other students how much to use the technology and for what for. Secondly, as and when you are using the technology for a certain set of purposes, make sure that the word which is Dr. Malhotra has used is, it has to be absolutely judicious. Judicious means you need to identify yourself as and when your eyes are asking for something, they are more important. So you need to learn to prioritize what is more important, your eyes or the education you are getting through this, or the happiness which is very temporary you are drawing out of a gaming process. All that you need to watch out for. And honestly speaking, these council kids, they are counseling my young other kids, and their interaction over the platform is helping them to cope with it. Because as a teacher, you keep telling them, they will listen, they will agree to this, they will forget it after a while. But when they repeat for their own classmates and all that, that's when it gets actually cemented. So the bigger challenge which the teachers have basically, I'll say they have come up very well. Whatever the age range you may say, a teacher from the range of 30 to 60, anywhere in the middle of it, was not very handy with the, they were handy with their subject, they were not handy with the technology. But within no time, they've adapted to it. That's what the beauty of the human race is. But all of us have to understand bigger values, that value of patience, value of time, value of discipline, value of those very components which defines an individual. I keep telling kids, like if I were to name like Sachin Tendulkar, so there is a research which was conducted and was said, had Sachin Tendulkar played something else other than cricket, would have been the same successful Sachin Tendulkar. The answer to that is surprisingly yes. And the idea is, the reason is why Sachin Tendulkar is because of those human qualities, that he is determined, he is passionate, he is dedicated. These are the things, he is disciplined. He knows that 6 o'clock I have to be on the field, so he will be on the field at 6 o'clock. So those qualities are to be the ones which needs to be actually nurtured and honed. So as a school, as educators, this is our prime duty that we should focus on those values. Honestly speaking, bookish learning can be done at any point in time. Whether we lose 1 year or 2 years in this process, that has no meaning at all. If we cut down onto the syllabus or we have more syllabus during this period, there is absolutely no meaning. Because children, those who actually at times repeat year or two, successfully do so much well in life, what we don't even anticipate during the school days. Those who are doing exceptionally well in the school, sometimes they lag behind in the career and profession by 2-3 years. So it's just a matter of chance, and it has to be taken in that stride what is coming your way. So my suggestion and advice, what I'm looking at my place is that educators have adapted to it, and let us be very clear and honest to ourselves. Now it is a part of life. Whether the pandemic is there or is not there, is over today or after a year, integrated learning, a hybrid model of learning, is going to be the actual scene in the times to come. The reason for that is because you keep fighting pollution someday, then you fight rain some other day, then you will fight with summer someday, and then the winter someday. At that point in time, this technology is the one which is going to come your way and help you out. So you can't discard it by saying this, no, it is not required and it is too much for the eyes and all that, or too much for ears for that matter. Even for the ears also, because you are on with your earpods and all that. So that also, it shows the decibel levels, how many decibel levels you have shown for a week's time. So we have to accustom to it. And we have, as early as we do it, how quickly we do it is the ability we have to actually acquire. As a nation, as an individual, all that has to be definitely looked at.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. I think it was much needed. So, Mr. Kara, I think yours is one thing, one sector which is growing exponentially. I think nobody thought that digital education will find its way in this form. And you've been part of it for a very long time. You founded a company earlier and you've been with Byjus, which is by far the pioneer in online education. How do you look at it? Do you still feel that India has a long way to go? Or do you think that we really got our foothold? How do you look at this situation?
There have been a lot of people working for quite a while in the edtech space because they are quite passionate and believe in the power of education to transform the country. So it's a very, very, it's a noble calling, if I would say, right? And obviously there's a lot that can happen to take education to the next level. And the belief fundamentally was technology can play a big role in this particular space, right? And a lot of work that we've done in the past, a company like Byjus managed to connect with the students and create that excitement. And I think students did adapt to the idea quite early. What the pandemic essentially has done is opened up the minds of a lot of non-believers, right? I mean, there have been educators who are forward thinking. I mean, people like Mr. Anil Kumar who've led the way, but a lot of people who were skeptical, including parents, teachers, their minds have opened up. They've realized that technology can really help, right? Obviously, what we are trying to do is trying to make it as impactful and as effective as possible, right? I mean, everybody says this, you're spending so much time on that particular screen. Our entire mission is to try and make that as effective and impactful as possible, right? And the multiple areas that we're trying to kind of, innovate and keep pushing the envelope on it. So I would say, is there a long way to go? There's lots that can be done, right? And obviously, as was mentioned by the panelist, right? Going forward, I mean, there's absolutely no denying that schools is the center of the education system. They'll continue to be, and as mentioned, schools will play a very, very critical role, especially in the social skills aspect, right? I mean, stuff like teamwork, camaraderie, all of these are stuff that, I mean, really is the center of what you learn at school, and that will continue to be, I mean, really the school's primary role. But what a lot of edtech companies will try and do is take up a bit of the load on some of the more academic stuff, which technology can play a role. As mentioned, hybrid learning, blended learning will continue, and each of us will play a part in that particular space, right? We specifically are focusing a lot on the at-home learning experience. We're trying to make it more effective. We're also trying to get in, obviously leverage technology to do stuff like what can't happen in a 1:many scenario in a classroom, stuff around personalization, understand users better, and start use technology in that front, but also the other way, right? Humanizing. So we have an entire team of mentors that are reaching out actively to students, counseling them. So we're trying to strike that balance of what we think is right for the student, right? So we're focusing a lot on the after school learning space, right? To try and pick up some of the load that at least, core academic concept delivery, we want to make sure that any gaps, if there, we can go in there and fill it out there. We want to make sure that kids fall in love, they understand concepts at a very, very fundamental level. And of course, the core, what we would call core value systems, social skills, all of that is something that schools will pick up the load. So I think there's a lot to be done in that space. And obviously there's an entire frontier of smaller town India, rural India, where there's a lot that can be done, right? There is the whole argument that there's digital divide, that I would say the needy don't necessarily have access, and that you have the haves and have-nots. But again, I mean, we are believers, and I think a lot of people agree that divide is a lot more in the physical world, right? In fact, digital, if anything else, has an opportunity for bridging some of the divide, right? One smartphone in the hand of some kid sitting in rural India has the power to really, democratize education, make it accessible. And we've seen that happen in a big way in the country in a lot of fields. So that will also continue to be an area for us. We are trying to get down to small town India. We are coming up with, talking to them in languages that they understand. So these are kids that could be going to English medium school, but they're first generation English speakers. Parents struggle. In small town India, schools also struggle. So we're trying to fill in some of those gaps. There's also a big initiatives we're doing in the social space. We're trying to reach out to really the needy people, working with a lot of not-for-profits to try and make an impact there, right? So there's really a lot that I would say there's a long way forward. What the pandemic really has done is it's opened up minds. Now it's up to a lot of committed individuals to now, use the opportunity. Minds are now open. Now, what can you go out there? How can you innovate? How can you execute well, partner with, all the leading professions in the field and truly make an impact where you can make an impact? That's what we are really working on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kara. I think but still there's a long way to go, and there's a lot of potential, I think, that the tech sector has. And this pandemic has opened the way. I think it can be exploited in a much better way. There's so much that we can do because our country is vast and we are aspirational. I'll go back to Dr. Sakhuja. Dr. Sakhuja, you spoke about monitoring the screen time, which most parents would like to do. And you also mentioned about frivolous watching and serious watching of the screen. But in times of lockdown, when we have no other option but to stick to the screen, how can parents decide and divide the frivolous watching and serious watching? How do you think that can be done?
It's not an easy situation,
Yeah.
In any house, this is a situation that leads to big epic battles.
True.
Right?
True.
All kids are upset about it. Parents are even more upset and so on. One thing I think we need to do is a little bit lead by example. We are no better. You're on the screen the entire time. You're on Netflix for a large portion of the day. It's just that the rules have to be established by us, and you're the boss. So they have to listen to you rather than you having to listen to them.
Yeah.
So that is one aspect that I think we should a little bit lead by example, where you can, if you're thinking of spending a little time together, then that group activity needs to be without phones. Like I think when Dr. Malhotra said, put your phones away during the meal time. And that is everybody's problem. Everybody's kids bring the phone to the table and they sit like this when you're on the phone on the meal with them. But so do we. But my call is very important because my patient has called me up, and so I must speak to him or I must message him back. But the child is not important. So I think that is one aspect that we need to look a little bit into towards ourselves. Second thing is maybe we can find like an alternative thing for children to do, like a hobby-based or a sport-based thing within the house or within the area of comfort that you have, which could be done. Because there is a lot of frivolous watching. When you're browsing for example, let's say to give an example, a sports shoe, and you want to browse and browse and browse and browse, and it's endless. You can spend an hour just looking at different shoes, and from there you'll drift off to something else and drift off to something else. So I'm just saying that if that could be cut down, there's no real answer to this question really to say how to cut it down. Each family will have to deal with it themselves really. But certainly a reduction in screen time will help. Because the school screen time is a fixed thing. You just can't get out of that because that's an important part of that child's build up and future and education. But and also, to be very honest, some amount of screen time they do need because their friends are on it. They have to communicate with them. They have to socialize and they have to entertain themselves, just like all of us need to. So this is not an easy business, not at all an easy situation to be in. And I think what we can really best hope for is that this thing passes off also a little faster.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Malhotra, would you like to add to it? Because the more they are on screen, the more they are getting anxious. They may not be meeting their friends, but they are connected with them online, that they're learning online. Do you see anyone suffering because of this? The mental trouble has increased because of that?
Yes, I mean, I think very beautifully answered by Dr. Sakuja. And I just little elaboration on what he has already said is being role models ourselves. As parents, we have to be good role models. And we have to be together on this. So if it's husband and wife who are constantly negating each other at home, and if one is not following the right discipline, then that also sets a bad precedent and bad example to follow for the child. Then you can't, and then children become quite manipulative in such kind of arguments which happen at home. So we have to be together on this as a family is number one. Number two, we can always set aside certain time zones when we're not going to use any digital platform. So be it the meal time, be it at least 1 hour prior to our bedtime. So some sense of discipline which needs to be imbibed. And when we're talking about core curriculum and subject matter, yes, that is important. But I think today's age and stage of life that we're all living in, it becomes all the more important to impart value-based education to our children. Irrespective of the number of chapters that a child studies, I think even if there are 1 or 2 chapters which are deducted, and instead of that, I mean, even when you're talking about language subjects, for example, so if you, instead of having 20 chapters for English or for Hindi, if you can have maybe just limited number of chapters, and that too focusing on model-based education, you are teaching both the language as well as empathy, concern, gratitude, discipline alongside. And even when these classes are held through the school platforms, I think one needs to also get across to the children that how they have to use this technology, and already because they are spending some quantum of time on screen because of their curriculum, this is how they have to curtail on frivolous screen time alongside. So with the beginning of every class, I mean, if that is discussed, it's like a constant reinforcer, not just coming through the parents, but also coming through the school. And I think like Mr. Kumar very aptly said, it has to be in tandem between the school, the parents and the student, isn't it? And the peers alongside. And peer educators, I think, have a great role to play here, because at times children listen to their age group more in today's age, or perhaps a guy or a student who's a year senior, much better than at times, across the generation. So even if those models are set in wherein there's a sense of discipline, a sense of responsibility towards oneself, towards one's own health, And to build up that coping ability, I think it takes you to a greater level in terms of both health as well as in terms of your mental health.
Thank you, Dr. Malhotra. So taking from this, I'd like to ask Mr. Kumar, do you think this is the right time to relook at the curriculum that we have? We can restructure the curriculum. We can add in more of holistic education instead of, and take away few, redundant chapters. Maybe anyway, we can't complete the entire course with the kind of challenges that we have. So do you think what Dr. Malhotra has been talking about, we can have something more than what, the bookish knowledge we've been giving to our children till now? As an academic, do you think this is the right time to think about and restructure our curriculum?
I completely agree with that. Changing curriculum is like repairing a plane while it's flying. So you have to repair it at any point in time whenever you have to do it. So it's better to do it at whatever the stage you are supposed to. Now is the time, I'll say, is the best time, in the sense that we need, since everybody is being asked to think on different lines, there is definitely a scope for this to be done right now. What NEP has done is definitely a step in that direction. There's no doubt about it. But I'll definitely look at it for this particular year. I'll say, honestly speaking, Madam Priyanka, you will definitely agree with me. What you have learned in 4th standard, I'll say, if I were to talk about myself, in other than what you call mathematics, which is my subject, I hardly remember anything. And it doesn't serve any great purpose even in life today. Nothing against any particular subject. They have their own values. Like if I were to talk about what Dr. Malhotra has talked about languages, I'll say about social studies. What Einstein said something about social studies was really funny. But truly speaking, it has its own advantages and its own disadvantages. So what I'll say, it is surely a fair look at this curriculum now can lead to, I'll say, what is more important for a next grade. We should see it like that rather than seeing it in the light of that, oh, the child should learn this for whatever reason it may be. I'll say something which is going to connect to the next standard will be the way to look at it. So I'm definitely for it. And I'll say, whether you test 50% of the syllabus, I'm starting from 50%. Whether you test 50% of the syllabus or 40%, I'm not saying 60%. The idea is, has the child learned it? That is a big question. That is what your aim should be. That is what the aim of educators in today's time should be. That, look, okay, we wanted you to be disciplined this year. Are you? Let's change the parameter in evaluation completely from, okay, you have learned a plus b whole square. Okay, no, forget it. Just tell me, you are supposed to be getting up every day at this time. Are you? Perhaps if every parent does that, every teacher does that, every school does that, reinforces this. I'm saying that whatever NCC used to do in past, every parent will be able to do it at home. And if every family does this, we have achieved that what the pandemic wants us to achieve. And honestly speaking, this is the right time to actually change that dimension completely.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kara, what is your take on all this? Because EdTech is now coming up in a big way. And personally, I feel we can reach out to the rural areas, where education is not so easily available. Even if there are schools, the quality is not up to the mark. And this is where EdTech can fill in and help the students who are aspirational, who really want to learn more, but they can't come to big cities. This will also reduce the burden on big cities. Not everybody needs to come to DU to take admission. Maybe they can take up a course in any of the EdTech platforms. Do you think we are anywhere close to it? Do you think we can achieve that?
I think the possibilities are definitely now really there, right? There are a lot of concerted efforts towards it, right? And I would say, the two ways to look at this, really, right? One axis is, the axis, for example, Mr. Anil Kumar was talking about, right? Like, this is a time to relook the way you learn, right? And I would say, a lot of the learning has been about, fear of exams, right? That's why a lot of people learn. And this is a great time to say, hey, listen, there's really no fear of exams. So now this is a great time to talk about get people to learn because, for the love of learning, because they actually want to learn. Now, it might sound very idealistic, but that's the beauty of these times, right? That it gives you the opportunity to actually, to actually go out, and that's a philosophy we believe in. Can we go out and actually make it come alive? And that obviously democratizes stuff. It means that a kid in a small town village in whatever North India is equivalent to somebody sitting in Bombay. Access is available to everybody. So there's absolutely no doubt that this is a great opportunity to democratize education, make access for everybody, and really change the way people look at it. Now, is it going to translate, like you said, right? Is it going to translate to kids actually not migrating to urban and all? I think those are larger, social development issues that I don't know. I mean, that really time will tell. But what we are definitely working on, and a lot of is we want to provide the same, excellent educational experience that a child sitting in a very, very remote area can get. And that opportunity has actually come alive because smartphones are now widely available, connectivity is widely available, right? There is still the issue of the haves and have-nots. There are still, there is a certain section of society that doesn't have access because they're not necessarily, it's an affordability issue. But even there, we're seeing tremendous amount of, connectivity is seen as almost like an essential need today. Smartphones are seen as almost essential. Governments are making investments in that direction. And therefore, there will be, all these kids with the passion to learn, with the interest to learn, or even the kids who just don't have any exposure. It's an opportunity for educators, tech companies to inculcate that love for learning, get them interested, get them open up their minds, feed the curiosity, right? And actually make that experience something that they enjoy, right? It shouldn't be something that they're scared of. It shouldn't be drudgery. I think that this kind of situation offers a fertile ground for that to happen. And yeah, we are really optimistic about our ability to do that. We're seeing great results. We're seeing consumers from every part of the country actually, access high quality education, shine, enjoy it, come through with stories about how passionately they're doing it. And it's opened a lot of people's eyes, right? A lot of parents' eyes, a lot of teachers' eyes are opened. And and I think there's a long way to go, I would say. Yeah.
But still, we have started the process, I think.
Absolutely, we have.
And we are doing substantially well as compared to what...
we ourselves have consumers from pretty much every part of the country, almost like, humongous number of pin codes, almost 70,000 pin codes consumers are accessing the product.
Despite the digital divide that we have, isn't it?
And digital divide really is not geographic anymore, right? Rural India has connectivity, rural India has smartphones, right? Whatever little divide left is probably in the quality of the device that they have, right? You have a slightly smaller smartphone versus you have a fancy iPad. I think that's probably the experience. But again, a lot of tech companies, us especially, trying to make sure that divide shouldn't be too stark. The experience has to be so good that you can consume it on a smartphone. It has to, concepts have to come to life. You have to kind of, we want to provide the opportunity for the child to immerse, use simple technologies at the back end, personalize the experience for the user. Languages, for example, right? Now you have content in multiple languages. We understand what the consumer seems to be grasping, feed the content accordingly, take him down relevant learning paths. Curriculum can be reimagined by personalizing it, right? You can personalize learning path for kids. There's a lot of possibilities out there, and you're starting to see a lot of progress on that front and results as well on that front, right? So absolutely, I think, there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of work that's happening, right? It's not a completely, unknown frontier. We pretty much believe that there are a lot of potential solutions out there that are already being incubated.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think we should take a few questions by the audience, and there are many parents who have written to us. So I'll club a few questions which I would want Dr. Sakhuja to answer. Now there is this mother, Winnie Alex from Bangalore. She's saying if there is any specific eye exercises that kids can do daily to reduce the harms of screen. And she also asks if adjusting brightness of the screen can reduce eye stress, and what should be the ideal brightness. So Dr. Sakhuja, if you could answer that.
I think that's a great question. See, there is no, it is not like they're coming from the screen, something's going to happen to the muscles of the eye, but the muscles of the eye get tired when they're focusing on a screen. The human eye was not designed to be looking at something at 30 centimeters. It was designed to look at infinity. So the eye is meant to stay straight ahead like this. Every time your object of regard comes closer and closer, the eyes start turning inwards like this, right? So when the object of regard is right here, the eye will go right in. That's called convergence. Now, when you're on a screen for many hours, or even you study for many hours, children develop a condition called convergence insufficiency. That means their eye muscles just get tired. It's in addition to the dryness. And so because this is the whole day they're sitting with their eye focused at a converged position. So one thing they need to do is a convergence exercise. Simple exercise, the pen at an arm's length, focus on the nib, bring it closer and closer and closer and closer and closer without letting the nib become double, almost till the point where you can touch your nose. Hold to the count of 10, repeat to a cycle of 10 cycles. Easy to do, takes barely a few minutes to do. And what it will do is it will sustain or sort of give you more, sort of longer reading ability, longer time that you're able to read without the eye getting exhausted. The other part of her question is that she wants to know about brightness of the screen. Now, brightness of the screen, again, is because of the glare that comes from a screen that causes the irritation to the eye. So obviously, you keep the screen brightness to a little lower level. There's no fixed parameter how much it should be kept at. And now, in the recent years, and there will certainly be one question or the other about this, is about blue light protect. Because everybody wants to use blue light protective glasses now. So we know this for a fact for many, many years now, that there is a component of light called blue light, all over the place, invisible light from a screen, wherever it may be. This component is damaging to the retina over a progressive period of time. It's one of the in fact, it's one of the known causes of a condition called macular degeneration in elderly patients. Now, we do not know when so much excessive exposure to a screen is taking place, what is going to happen to a child's eye over a period of time. So, like for example, the lenses that we use during cataract surgery, or even today, have blue light protective pigments in them to cut out the blue light. The night mode of your screen, of a computer screen, when you put on a mobile on night mode, is actually cutting out blue light. That's why it becomes a little yellowy color. So now most opticians will offer this option that when you want to get your glasses made, you can get a blue light protective option put into the thing to cut it down, to cut down the amount of sort of blue light component from the screen.
All right. So now there is another mother who has asked this, and I think Dr. Malhotra can answer this question. Now, she is a Hazel mother. The son doesn't apparently eat if he is not watching YouTube. I think we spoil our own children and then we keep complaining. This is a clear-cut example of that. So much so that he throws tantrums and gets depressed also. So do you think the problem is as grave, or it is a clear example of bad parenting? How do you look at it?
I wouldn't judge the parent as good or bad, because I think all parents try to put in their best possible to raise their children. There's this constant mother's worry where they feel the child has not properly eaten their meal, and many a times in most of the households they do this. They either kind of make the child watch the television screen or YouTube channel or something, wherein the child is engrossed in watching, and in that garb they're able to feed whatever amount the mother feels is sufficient for the child. Now, we should not be conditioning our child, to kind of be fed while watching television or while watching some other screen, because then what happens is the child is not mindful of what the child is eating or having at that point of time. And invariably, the child tends to overeat, right, in the process. Maybe to the mother's satisfaction, but not to the child's good health. The second thing is all behaviors most of the behaviors can be learned. I mean, behaviors are learned, but at the same time, behaviors can also be unlearned. But it takes some time for the behavior to be unlearned. There has to be a constant effort in the other direction to be able to unlearn what has already been learned. And if you feel the learning has happened in the wrong direction, I would not say wrong parenting, but wrong direction, then perhaps we have to change the direction, and then we have to be patient enough and be consistent and persistent enough in that effort so that the child unlearns the behavior that the child has got into. So if the child needs to watch something which is interesting, rather than having to watch a screen at that point of time, you can engage in a positive dialogue or a story, with the child and discuss some interesting incident. Then the child's mind is there while the child is eating. And gradually, you develop this habit in the child to enjoy the meal, where the taste of the food is enjoyed, where the smell of the food is enjoyed, isn't it? So you are eating it mindfully. This would take some time, but then don't succumb to the tantrums. What happens usually is the child learns this behavior, that if I throw a tantrum, then the mother or the father would give in, right? So obviously, if you know this is where the pellet comes from, even a mouse would do that. It will go and press the button in that direction where the food pellet comes out from. So that is what the child also learns. And usually what we do is, initially we say no, and then when the child throws a tantrum, we say yes. So the child learns that this is the key to get my work done, right? So in order to unlearn that, I think one should not succumb and should not give in, but be firm, right? Because you have to check the behavior. We are not checking the child, we are checking the child's behavior. There's a difference.
True.
So at the same time, you love the child, you care for the child, you remain polite, but you remain firm in your action. And you be consistent as parents. So it shouldn't be one parent saying something and the other parent just kind of contradicting it. Don't do that, right? But it'll take some time. And make sure that even if the child doesn't eat for some time, the hunger, let the hunger arise from within, and the child would automatically reach out to the food, rather than overfeeding the child before the hunger is experienced by the child. So that's something which I would focus on. But it takes roughly a couple of days to a month for the child to unlearn and then relearn the new way. Yeah.
True. So there's this father who's complaining about his son, who was apparently very active and very bright student when he used to go to school. But now, ever since he is learning online and he's taking classes online, he is not performing as well. He's not too attentive. And what the father could sense is that maybe because of the lack of interaction with the teacher. So, Mr. Kumar, I think you can answer this question. If, is it hampering the learning process because the students are not regularly in touch with the teachers? They are meeting them on screen and not meeting them in person. So do you think that is affecting the learning process? And some of the children are affected, if not all?
No, surely it does affect, definitely. There's no doubt about it. I'll say change is the spice, basically. So as long as it was a change initially, people loved it. Now, since it has become a routine for them that they have to sit with the camera and to listen to the teacher and all that, and then to apply daily, become a boredom now. Look at it from the perspective of a child. From the child's perspective, it is just a waste of activity if he doesn't want to learn a particular subject. And supposing that interest by virtue of the screen is just sitting before the screen, may not be learning, which is like it used to happen in the normal classroom also. The child is open, is ready with the book on and all, but nothing is going to the head. So there is nothing unnatural about it. I'll put it like that. It is absolutely natural. There may be a variety of factors because of which this is not happening. But if I were to talk about in terms of, I'll say today's context when it is all online, my suggestion would be that whichever the place the child is, I'm sure teachers must be taking care of making small groups. Like, for example, initially when we started with the greatest advantage which technology provides today is that I can have my 300 students in one particular teacher is on with those 300. But that is not the right way to put it, basically. Then we brought it down to say, I'll say just 40 as usual as that of the classroom scenario. And in 40, then we realized that there are children who do not follow the instructions with that same pace. So we've reduced and boiled it down to maybe a group of 5, maybe a group of 10. So a small request of that nature, I'm sure, to the teachers will definitely help. It's better the child poses those questions, what he's facing as difficulty by virtue of a talk with the parents. And that should be addressed rather than looking at it from a perspective that it is a learning disability of any kind. No. I'll say if you look at the age group, that age group may be a cause that he doesn't want to learn anymore right now because of some other reason, may not be only the online. So we need to deep dig in this and then find out what is the cause of it. After coming to the conclusion that it is only because of the online, then I'll say it's better to have a smaller group and an interactive group with the kids on the platform itself. Like you can have we basically encourage chats on the platform so that children, now there is absolutely, it's I'll say both sides, it's very difficult to actually address on that side. Suppose because children on the chat, they may go on a absolutely different note. So I will only say to the parent only one thing, that smaller groups and groups, the way I said, the peer learning, let him be attached to his friends, and that will help in a better way than what he's facing right now. Commenting on various other parameters which are definitely existing at home, you sit in a particular confined space for more than 2-3 hours, you feel bored. So in any case, to address that, it has to have a different strategy altogether. More and more interaction with the students over the chat, along with, and that is an official chat. I'm not saying go to a WhatsApp chat and all that. If you're using a Microsoft platform, do it on a Microsoft platform in under the supervision of a teacher. Then if you're doing it like on any other platform, let there be a teacher around. When that kind of a thing happens, like we conducted so many activities over the virtual platform, and we conducted national level competition in this process. The reason, because you can have children from across globe within no time. So if there is a way to definitely connect, we must use this in a right spirit and the right approach. That is what is the key to it.
Perfect. So there's this person called Sunena who is from somewhere close to Hyderabad. So she wants to know if the online courses are now recognized by corporates, and she's slightly apprehensive about the validity of online courses that we have. So Mr. Kara, if you can explain that it is valid or not, if the job market recognizes these courses or not, if you can just mention something about that. I think she's a little anxious about whether, if she's studying online, if she's taking up a course on an edtech platform, will that have validity in the job market or not? Will she be eligible to higher studies or not?
Got it. So I would say there are different types of courses in the online market, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at us, Byjus, we obviously are, like, for example, we're providing after school learning to kids in school, right? We're also providing coaching. I mean, we're kind of helping kids prepare for competitive exams like IIT, JEE or IAS, right? And similarly, you have other, some of these, guys who are helping professional training course providers. Some of them are helping provide skills. So you may say, I want to go and understand, for example, the latest big data technologies, right? I want to learn Hadoop, or I want to learn Python or whatever, right? Some of them actually are providing certificates as well, right? And these certificates are provided in association with universities, or it will be provided by themselves itself, right? I would say among all the various stakeholders who recognize online education, corporates are probably the most open-minded, right? So for example, I mean, you can't take a school kid and say, listen, he's only attending, a course from, outside of school, and he can't necessarily go and give a CBSE exam, right? He needs to be enrolled in a school, right? And similarly, college, he needs to be enrolled in a professional, recognized institution. I would say corporates are probably the ones that are most open-minded about looking beyond, what are, colleges, so to speak. So there are a variety of professional skills programs that will be recognized by corporates, but obviously it's, again, there is the wheat and the chaff, right? You have to separate both. There will be a lot of fly-by-night operators who will claim to just teach you some stuff and nobody has value for it, but there will be some with no recognition whatsoever, no university, no certificate, but corporates will probably value that because that they actually believe that a person undertaking that course is more skilled, more equipped to fulfill that role in that corporate, right? So I would say, in fact, there are lots of courses out there which open up pathways to better career opportunities, right? And you must definitely explore that. I think the fear is a little unfounded, but you should be careful on what you choose, of course, needless to say.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We are running out of time, but two questions actually I'll take, and we can quickly just find out an answer for it. Neha Shah, she's mother of a 16-year-old from Mumbai. She claims that all the screen activity and lack of physical activity is leading to mental stress and meltdown. Please suggest some ways to handle children and their anxiety and stresses. So Dr. Malhotra, if you can give some quick suggestions on what we should do to handle the anxiety.
There could be some generic suggestions. There could be some specific context-based. First of all, let's look into the generics. I think, yes, bit of physical exercise is a must, at least half an hour to 1 hour of exercise. Whether you jog, whether you walk, if you have a big corridor, please walk there. Please engage in some bit of yoga exercise if you can do that. even playing badminton with a family member, or games, where you involve yourself physically, is something which I would strongly encourage here. The second thing is, with respect to specifics, look into the reasons why the child is feeling anxious. And one needs to understand, if I'm feeling anxious, it's an emotion. That emotion is usually linked to a situation, right? But in between the situation and the emotion that I experience, there is a thought process which happens. Now, at times we cannot change the situation. There are times that you can change the situation to your advantage, but there are times, and many of the times, we are not able to change the situation. There, the role of changing the perspective becomes very important, wherein the perspective becomes more evolved, more holistic. You are able to see the other person's point of view also, and you don't make it sound like a do and die situation for yourself. So a lot depends on how you process that information. Problems are a part of life. You cannot have a life without a problem. But how do you make an effort to find a solution to it? Making an effort in itself is therapeutic, because then you are thinking in the right direction. At least you are thinking logically rather than getting emotionally overwhelmed and drained, right? So that's some point where one can inculcate logical thought process to be able to cope better with the same situation that a child may be finding very difficult, hard, or unsurmountable. And that in itself creates a sense of positive coping and positive ability and a problem-solving approach, which helps the child learn better. So what you learn is how to resolve your issues without getting into a blame game, without becoming too judgmental, without throwing overreactions which are not helpful to you or to the immediate environment that you are living in. And a bit of meditation also helps. At times, just watching your thoughts pass through without giving too much of an emotional or action energy to that thought, because thoughts at times may be just powerless. At times they might be powerless. A lot depends on how you empower them and which ones you empower. The only way you can empower your thoughts is through an emotional attachment to that thought, or perhaps by bringing that thought into an action mode, bringing in action in that direction, right? So if you choose the right kind of thoughts to associate your emotions with, and you associate the right kind of action with that particular thought, then perhaps you're able to resolve the thinking disturbance which might be happening, and that could be responsible for generating anxiety. So we say, don't minimize the positives which you have, the ability to cope with situations which you already have. Don't magnify the negatives of the situation. Don't overgeneralize and don't pass sweeping statements. Don't be quick to be judgmental and to associate negative labels. See how best you can resolve the issue at your level. That way, the key to your happiness would be with your own self.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Sakuja, if this question is something which I think is very important and you can answer it. How safe it is for students to use headphones over extended periods of time? This is asked by Nagraj Shinoy. He is father of a young boy who's in class 8 from Bengaluru. So if there is anything called optimal screen time, and what safety precautions should students take? So headphones also, of course, if it has any relevance with screen.
Not really my specialty. That becomes an ENT specialty.
Yeah.
You need to keep your decibel levels down. So that's
right.
the main thing. Otherwise, they are safe enough. The current quality of headphones are pretty safe. Problem is that everybody keeps them on too loud. But this, I think, will be, an ENT might be able to answer this thing a little better.
Yeah.
As far as the screen time issue that he's asked, what did he ask exactly about the screen time?
Yeah, optimal screen time. He is also.
Again, for that, like I said, there's no real answer for that optimal screen time. Just keep it down to a sane level with which, where you're able to assimilate what you need to assimilate, entertain yourself to the level that you can, socialize with the amount that you can, but without having to just lie in, like Dr. Malhotra mentioned, lie in bed and have the completely altered sleep pattern and keep on and on with it till 3 o'clock at night. Obviously is not a great idea. So I think that just has to be a little balanced approach, partly directed by the parent and partly, sort of reiterated to the child again and again, like it was mentioned by the other peer groups in the school, friends who can sort of guide them, and so on.
Right. Perfect. So with this, we come to an end of this session. It was quite insightful, and I think I personally got a lot of information. I thank all the experts who have given valuable inputs and informed us in many ways. To access many more such discussions on key topics like today's and learn more about the new normal of online education, please log on to www.timeskeeplearning.com. Keep Learning, a Times of India initiative powered by Byjus.